Ladies and gentlemen, Player 2 here, coming at you with another Overwatch guide. Today I'm going to be covering Phara, but as an objective character reviewer slash strategy guide slash MLG pure skills no-scoper, I do have to make a confession. And it's kind of a shocking revelation to me, and it might be a shocking revelation to you as well, but guys, I'm not MLG with Phara. I've tried. I've put in hours of gameplay trying to practice this character. And you know, the only reason I kind of picked her up was because of the Ana Amari hype for the new sniper support class, which I will be covering. But I don't know what it is, guys. I just couldn't get my Phara to an above average standing. And it's just kind of made me sick as a person. You know, not just as a person, but as a console MLG no-scoper. As, you know, I was doing my 360s in the morning just trying to contemplate what I could do to improve the gameplay. I couldn't even, eat my bowl of Doritos that morning. You know, I had to get off-brand Doritos. I had to get off-brand Mountain Dew, some, citrus drop shit. I just don't know what I was, doing when I was playing this character, guys. I just felt like a scrub, and that's the worst feeling. With all that being said, though, let's move on with the character guide, because I really do think that Phara is one of the greatest competitive online assault characters that you'll ever play in this game, if you manage to get a handle on her, but a little bit better than I did. So, I'm going to go into why that is. First of all, difficulty 1-star, bullshit. And the exclusive reason it cannot be 1-star is because of her primary weapon, the rocket launcher. The rocket launcher is it does a massive amount of damage, and if you hit direct with it, it does staggering amounts of damage. It might be one of the highest damage weapons in the game. As you can see, it does more than half of the health of the training bot. But as you just saw, the trade-off is the splash damage is not that good, and the radius is actually quite small. You'll see here I'm shooting actually maybe slightly a foot to the left of this training bot. As you can see, it's taking no damage. He's actually looking at me he's looking at the blast like I'm a fucking idiot, which is kind of funny. So let's move over to the side a little bit more and see if we can get a radius on that. You see, that seems to be the max radius, but it does very minimalistic damage. I think that's less than 25 damage of splash, which is kind of staggering when you compare it to the overall max damage of the actual direct rocket hit. So the whole basis of being Phara is actually landing your rockets. And now how can you land your rockets more effectively? Well, I've found, and I kind of have to go over all the abilities to really cover this character because all of her abilities kind of coincide with each other, including the ultimate. You never really usually use one of these by themselves. You usually use multiple abilities at the same time because it's more effective that way. So, let me go over the abilities. You got the ultimate, which is the Barrage, which is launch... Let me just say it myself. You launch a continuous volley of mini rockets. And it's pretty great, but it uses the same strategy as actually using the rocket launcher for the most part, but there's a spacing thing which I will go over. Now, your L1 is jump jet, which literally just propels you upward in the air in no particular direction other than up. So it'll shoot you off up in the direction, but you cannot use it evasively. You can't pull back and then push back with it or anything. And then you have concussive blast, which can be used for some offensive capabilities, but you can also use it as an advanced player as an evasive, which I'll also get into. And your passive is hover jets, and this is actually something you want to do constantly, and I'm actually going to cover this ability first because you're going to be using this more often than basically everything else. And what I think this passive ability is actually great for is when you're stuck on the ground when both of those abilities are on cooldown. When you have to fight someone on the ground, which is not optimal. I don't suggest doing this on purpose, but what you want to do is you want to jump up and just hover and kind of aim downwards on the enemy as you shoot them. And the reason you should do this is because most online players are not as easy to hit as this train bot, and your auto aim is not going to really assist you in tracking these moving targets as much, and getting some splash damage off not only damages them slightly, which is better than nothing, but you often create that particle effect via the explosion. I'm about killed myself, which can actually be very obstructive. So like if this is in your face, like it's closer to your feet because like the enemy's like gonna be seeing this in their face. And as you can see, that particle effect actually can disrupt that opponent completely, even if you happen to miss. So I do recommend when you're starting a solo fight on the ground and all of your shit's on cooldown, go ahead and just hover above the opponent. You jump and you press L2. I think that's better than pressing X because it kind of frees up your other hand for button presses, and maybe if you had to throw out a melee if they were low on health, you know, things like of that nature. Next ability I have to cover would probably be Jump Jet. That would be the next thing, because that's where this is your bread and butter skill. You're going to be spamming this almost every time it's up, because that's your primary role in combat. Is as Phara, you're going to want to you're going to want to find your teammates, go up to them, but then see the enemy team, fly above the enemy team, and just start raining rockets down. And that's basically your B&B. That's what you're going to be doing. And again, the skill gap with this is that you have to learn to aim to hit the moving targets effectively with direct hits, because if you're not landing direct hits, you become way less viable and your damage is just much, much lower. So, what ability should I move on to next? Well, let's go ahead and move on to the ultimate rocket barrage, because there is a skill gap to this ability and it has everything to do with tracking your targets with it. A lot of people use Justice, or a lot of people who complain about using this ability are like, I get owned by it, but whenever I use it, I usually just die instantly. Well, the reason that is because when you're going to use your ultimate as Phara, you have to be aware of what the enemy team is doing and what your team is doing. For example, if you launch a rocket barrage, when the enemies are not grouped up, odds are one of them is going to look up and murder you, because you're literally a stationary target. Even though you're in the air, the sound cue is going to give you away. You may get one cheap kill off of it, but ultimately I feel like this is kind of a waste. What you're going to want to do is when the enemies pack up, you're going to want to jump over them, get within, I'd say, mid-distance. The closer you are, actually, the more effective Justice is actually dispatching people in a fast manner. Now, obviously, you're going to use it when say, Zarya drops her ult. You just jump up and just spray the enemy team, you know, effectively. Unless, of course, like Reinhardt has his shield up, then you fly above him or whatever, or just don't use it at all and just spam rockets till it goes away. Things of that nature, right? So I'm gonna try to demonstrate a Justice. So basically, when you're using Justice, you're going to want to move slightly ahead of your targets so that all of the rockets are going to hit them. That seems to be a commonplace thing, because I remember I tried to like track targets with just my reticle and use Justice that way, and what ended up happening is the rockets would kind of trail behind them and not do as much damage. Like some of the rockets would land and do splash, but not nearly as much when I just kind of snapped a bit ahead of the targets. And with all that being said, let's talk about Concussive Blast for a bit, because I think this is an interesting ability that has multiple uses, though predominantly you'll probably use it more one way or the other. I actually kind of use it more as an evasive, because only on certain maps can you knock people off the map with a blast. So the offensive application of this is obviously when there's a giant ledge, you pop this, people fall off the edge, and you can laugh maniacally as they fall towards their death. And then the second application is you could even use it mid-air to kind of push yourself off walls. If enemies are kind of grouped up tightly, you can kind of push them away, maybe like singling them out for your teammates to kind of murder. You can do what I usually do is if I'm caught with my pants down in like a room, I'll actually shoot it at my feet to kind of push me back so I could like get away from it. Or you push it at your feet and the enemy's feet, so you like kind of step up a bit so that you're both hit by the blast. That you're basically taking the spacing away from that enemy and also kind of like obstructing their vision slightly with that particle effect as you back up, leave, or get health. And you can even use it to prevent certain characters from getting the health kit. So like say you're fighting and you see an enemy running to get the health kit, you can push them away from the health kit and then like either grab it yourself or, you know, just have that enemy be finished off because they were low in the first place.
Right on target.
So in general, now that we've covered all of the abilities, how should you play Phara? Well, I've kind of suggested already that you should go with your team and literally just go, like, you're kind of like a little attack drone is Phara. You're going to be above the fight, like you're taking a very vertical perspective on the field, which is kind of a niche that only Phara fills as far as I'm aware. Like, there's certain characters who can get up to vertical surfaces for sure, but there is really no other freeform, like, projectile spamming hero. Like, Phara is literally the only, like, type or only breed in her class. There is no other really flying hero. You could argue that Mercy is one, but it's kind of situational and actually has pretty much everything to do with Phara. So if you're talking about good like character comps, I think Mercy and Phara is actually one of the most deadly compositions in the game if that Phara player happens to be a very accurate shot and that Mercy manages her health and damage buffs her properly, which you'll actually get to see an example of it, though like I said, I'm not the best Phara player, so I don't like go on a crazy kill streak or anything of that nature, but the potential is there. You know, the potential is there for, like, craziness. And also, you can point blank if you're feeling cheeky. Like, there's actually nothing wrong with doing this, because as you can see, I take way less damage than the training bots do. So if you're in a pinch, yes, you can point blank with the rockets. I guess I could make that clear before I move on. Let me just look over some stuff real quick and make sure that I have everything. I did want to look at some other references in the community, or just watch games in general, which is what I'll usually do. I won't watch another guide or anything, but I'll watch gameplay and be like, okay, what's viable for Phara? And I'll kind of like deduce that myself and try to give you guys the most comprehensive guide I can. As far as sensitivity settings go, do whatever you want. And I'm going to say it for this character because, again, I struggled with her. I cannot say that 100 sensitivity is extremely viable. You can do whatever auto-aim setting you want. Again, auto-aim isn't going to really matter when you're this high in the air and you're kind of floating around with jets. Like, just do whatever is going to help you land shots. And just kind of learn the travel time and the arc. It's all kind of ergonomic. I think that's the right word for it. It's all kind of ergonomic when it comes to, like, the pathing of that rocket, and you know, oh, I'm this far away and the rocket moves this fast, so I should shoot here because he's moving in this direction. There's a lot of that type of thinking, which I'm kind of used to with a lot of these Overwatch characters. It seems that that's a common theme because you kind of have to pre-aim for drag scopes, you kind of have to pre-aim for, you know, May's icicle, and even to an extent McCree's revolver, which I think is about to get a nice buff, so I might check him out after I do Ana Amari, depending on how soon she comes out. So, I guess we'll just get into the gameplay, guys. Are you ready for some justice? I bet you fucking are. Oh, shit. Oh. Are you guys ready for some justice? I hope you fucking are. Because I'm going to start out with doing right what I said we were going to do at the beginning. I went right up with my team. I started pushing off that Torbjorn. I kind of changed the priorities of that Reinhardt. You know, getting in some plays here. But I wanted to move on to the review of this character because I think some people would be interested, since I kind of struggled with the character, what my review would be. Because as you may or may not know, I like to review characters based on a 5-star scale, and this kind of revolves around how easy they are, how versatile they are, and how useful are they on a team composition. Like, are they good attackers, defenders, you know, just kind of go over some of the finer points of the character. And on the 1 to 5 scale, I have to give Phara a 4. She's actually incredible in the hands of a right player. Like, she is absolutely devastating because she fulfills a niche that no other character does. But what makes this character even more ridiculous, especially on the console ports of the game, is that when she is airborne, she's like doing freeform movements in the air, she's almost unkillable. for people who cannot, like, who aren't, like, very accurate or haven't practiced killing her in the past. Since Phara isn't adopted a lot on console, I actually started seeing her more and more on competitive. And I remember I actually had a team of, like, dedicated people, and whenever we would lose, it was because the enemy team had a Phara that knew what they were doing. And none of us were educated enough to really deal with the Phara on the field just because of how versatile she was. Especially when she had Mercy support. When this Phara player had Mercy support, she would wipe our team almost by herself because we were all frantically just trying to shoot her in the air. And it was kind of hilarious. So, like, we even tried, like, pulling out Roadhogs and stuff to try to deal with her. Like, Phara can just be a monster, like an absolute monster on some of these maps, guys, especially if you can keep her vertical. Like, I'm using some of these crates to my advantage, kind of like just hopping around, floating, just spamming that jump, shooting from above. See, I changed his, like, strategy. That guy was like, oh, I'm gonna shoot down on their team. He had to leave because he was terrified of me just spitting rockets at him. That was a pretty damn good direct hit. But I digress. So definitely 4 out of 5, and the only reason I had to deduct a star was because I think she's difficult to play. That's it. But I cannot ignore how viable this character is, even in the competitive scene. I think she's actually one of the most threatening console player characters, because the problem on console is accuracy, because we aren't using mouse and keyboard. The game was honestly designed for mouse and keyboard, so when you have a character that is kind of like not working with the whole people aiming with controllers, that becomes extremely deadly and extremely useful. Now the meta can change once people, like, adopt, you know, they understand how to deal with Phara, just like with Torbjorn. I remember Torbjorn used to be a huge problem until people learned how to deal with them. But until then, you guys, if you want to pick up an Assault player, like, if you are willing to invest time into a character, like, if you're like, oh, I can play every Assault character and I'm not sure, like, I want to main one, which one should I main, and I consider myself, like, a higher tier player, I feel like this is your chick, because she just does massive amounts of damage and she fills a very niche role that isn't used a lot. Let's talk about counters and who do you specifically counter. I would say Phara can specifically counter the team's Reinhardt composition because, for example, you can fly over his shield and completely change his priorities. You can literally disband a team who relies solely on the Reinhardt shield to push forward. You can basically just be an absolute monster in solo fights, especially in enclosed spaces, as you just saw. Like, the amount of damage you can put out as Phara on the regular is just kind of, like, silly. Like, when you get those direct rocket hits. Like, and you'll know when I get a direct rocket, it does ridiculous damage. Because you see that soldier gets his health back from the Mercy. I hit him once, he gets chipped off a bit by Reaper. I hit him once and he's just gone. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you can do this to some of the heavier tanks and they're easier to hit because they're just larger characters and you don't have to aim for body parts. You just have to aim for their overall just massive character. And again, here's another example of me just close quartering because, you know, it's viable because that May could shut down healers and stuff. And as Phara, I can push away if she starts to freeze me too much. So there's some more viable strategies. Hitting Pharaohs is kind of ridiculously hard, so I thought I'd include this little bit. So as far as your counter picks, probably by a large margin, Roadhog, because he can hook you right out the sky and interrupt your ult. May can be somewhat of a nuisance if she happens to freeze you or if she's good with that projectile. I think the new McCree after the buff, like, I don't know when we're going to get the buff here on console, but McCree, once his range is kind of, like, increased, he can be a real threat if he learns to shoot you. And I would say probably the biggest and the one, like, the character we would have to pick to try to deal with Phara 9 times out of 10 would be Soldier 76. Because Soldier 76's pulse rifle seems to be the best thing to chip away, like, Phara's health at any given time. And you can make an argument for snipers, but in my personal experience, I just haven't dealt with a lot of snipers, and I think that's just coincidental, to be honest. I didn't really get to fight a bunch of grandiose sniper players. But as you can see, I've ran completely through the gameplay this time, guys. I do want to thank you for watching. Let me know how you feel about Phara. Do you think that this guide was competent, or do you think it was compromised because of my average skill set from the character? And do let me know if you think I left out a finer point with the character as well. I do love talking to you guys in the comments. And I guess I'll see you for the next video. Hopefully it's going to be Ana Amari. I'm very excited for that prospect.